Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here, critiquing subscriber mixes, episode 15. So before we begin, I just want to let you know that right now you could download my free guitar impulse response Octapack. Within the Octapack, I include 8 impulse responses, 4 different microphones, 2 mic placements per microphone. There are impulse responses of SM57s, SM81s, a Sennheiser E609, as well as an Electro Voice RE16. Again, the IR pack is absolutely free. There's a link below in this video's description where you could download it right now. Okay, so without any further ado, let's jump into this group of mixes submitted by my loyal email subscribers. Okay, this first mix here comes from Mr. Yang Thung Bemo. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. Okay, well, dude, to me, your mix sounds great. You mentioned in your email to me that you're saying that your mix sounds a little too raw for your tastes. I gotta say this, everything sounds really well performed. The source sounds sound great. The mix is crystal clear. To me, it doesn't sound too raw. If I have to pick anything, I'll just say that maybe you might want to go in there and maybe program more dynamic range with your programmed drums here. But that's only if I'm really nitpicking, and that's only my own personal taste. You might like a more consistent drum sound like this. But again, your mix doesn't sound overly raw to me. It sounds actually quite polished, in my opinion. So thank you for your submission. Try those tweaks on your programmed drums and let me know how that works out for you. So up next, we have a mix from Joshua. Let's see what we got. Okay, well, Joshua, to me, your mix sounds awesome. It's really clear, super polished and pro sounding. Now, you mentioned in your email that you're having issues with your lo-fi guitar and your lo-fi vocals competing for space in the mix. And this is a common problem because obviously they're both going to be competing in the mid-range. Since lo-fi is generally a roll-off of the low end and top end, they're both going to be on top of each other. The way I combat this in my own mixes is I will generally take one of the sources and make them stereo, or I will widen the mono source. So for example, I noticed in this track here that you had the mono lead guitar, lo-fi lead guitar up the center, and you had the vocal kind of doing this panning thing between the speakers. In my opinion, that works. What I would maybe do is keep the vocal in the center because that's what the listener is generally going to be paying attention to most, because we have to remember the average listener is generally paying attention to vocals more than any other instrument. So vocals for me will always take priority. And then what I'll do, like I mentioned earlier, is take my mono lead guitar and apply a delay, maybe a 15 to 25 millisecond delay to widen my mono source. So my guitar lead, it's sitting off on the sides and my vocal is up the center. So give that a shot and let me know how that works out for you. Awesome mix. All right, mix number 3 comes from Valentine. well, Valentine, your mix sounds awesome. We're having a great run here today. I just want to say this. I wouldn't really change anything about your mix. It sounds really clear, really polished, and really warm, and kind of like analog sounding. It's very pleasing to listen to, and it's not taking my head off, even though it's very aggressive, heavy music. I mean, if I had to nitpick and pick anything, maybe turn your snare down by, a dB, dB and a half, maybe 2 dB, or clip it a little more aggressively so the transient isn't as strong. But that's really if I'm nitpicking. While I'm listening to this mix, I'm just enjoying it as a listener. Really well written, really well produced, and it just sounds like a great overall production. So keep up the great work and keep me posted on your projects. I'd love to hear more. All right, our next mix here comes from Mr. James. Okay, well, James, your mix sounds awesome. In your email to me, you mentioned that you're having issues dealing with your cymbals, and cymbals, just like guitar tone, can be very difficult to mix and get right. I just want to say this. To me, your mix sounds pretty well balanced. The cymbals don't sound, wrong as far as EQ is concerned. I would just simply turn them down. We have to remember the cymbals don't have to be that loud for them to cut through the mix if you're properly, using low pass filters and removing extra top end on tracks that don't need them. So in other words, if you're making room for your extra top end, you don't need to have your cymbals that loud to be heard in the mix. And in my opinion, these cymbals can definitely come down a good 2 to 3 dB, and you won't be missing anything, and you won't be dealing with this issue of having your cymbals be a little too aggressive and harsh sounding. So James, simply take these cymbal tracks within this mix, turn them down, and let me know how it works out. All right, our next mix here comes from Craig. Okay, well, Craig, your production sounds awesome. Right off the bat, the one thing I will say is that your cymbals are pretty loud. I mean, when the crashes kick in, they're grabbing my attention and sort of taking my head off. But they sound great, but much like with the last mix, just turn them down a little and you won't be missing out on much. The other thing I noticed is that your guitars kind of sound like they're sort of narrow. Now, I don't know if this is just because you don't have them panned out, hard left and hard right. If you're not hard panning your rhythm guitars, definitely do that. There's no reason to pan them in a little. People seem to become obsessed over this for some reason, but most pro heavy music mixers hard pan their rhythm guitars, and for good reason. That's how you get that nice wide guitar tone. Or maybe you're using some form of stereo widener that's using phase shifting or something weird that's making your stereo image actually seem smaller. If you're using a stereo imager or widener, in my opinion, you should just get rid of it. Not to say that they don't have their place in mixing, but I do hear your guitars kind of being sort of taken in towards the center. So if you're using that, get rid of it and let me know how that works out for you. Excellent production. Okay, and our final mix here comes from Mr. Frank. Okay, well, Frank, your mix sounds killer. I really dig the rhythm guitar tone, sounding nice and thick, yet clear, which is not easy to achieve, and you're definitely achieving it here. The one thing I'll say that does stand out to me and that kind of broke up my attention as far as what to pay attention to in the earlier section of the song is that you have this nice wide rhythm guitar tone happening, and then a lead's kicked in, and I wasn't sure where to place my attention because the lead guitars were also wide. And so far, from what I could hear, unless you plan on recording vocals on top of this, this is an instrumental track. And because of that, when you have a lead guitar kick in and you want that to be the primary focus of attention, you should, for the most part, pan it center. To me, it sounded like you had two rhythm guitars out wide, which is good. And then your lead guitar, you either turned it into a stereo source by widening that as well and leaving only the bass in the center, or you actually doubled your lead guitar and then panned your lead guitars. I'd recommend, at least for the section earlier in the song where it should take center stage, to pan your lead guitars center. Or if you had a solo lead guitar and you turn it into a stereo source, just get rid of that stereo source and keep it mono, at least for that earlier section during the instrumental section of the music. Because for me, vocals and lead guitars or any other element where you want the listener to pay close attention to, make sure that's up the center because that's where we will easily be able to focus our attention as a listener. Excellent mix, and thank you for your submission. So I would just like to shout out and thank every subscriber for entering this excellent group of mixes. Now, if you sent me a mix and I haven't gotten to it yet, just be patient. I have a lot to get through, and I'll definitely get to it within one of these videos in this series. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things Metal and Rock production. If you're interested in some Frightbox swag, got t-shirts, mugs, and a ton of other cool stuff on the way. There's a link below to the Frightbox merch store in this video's description. And again, remember you could download my free guitar impulse response Octapack. 8 impulse responses, 4 different microphones, 2 different mic placements per mic on my oversized Mesa Boogie cab loaded with V30 speakers. You can't go wrong. There's a link below in this video's description. And until next time, happy mixing.